What's up everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who's been following and watching my livestream contents, I've just finished the first Berserker Khazan. Make sure to check my entire playlist on that. Personally, this is the hardest Souls-like I ever played up to date. Harder than Lies of P I can say. And in this video, I made a list of all the main bosses from easiest to hardest based on my personal experience. Take note, my basis for these rankings are the total time duration I've spent fighting them, regardless of how annoying or bullshit they are. So let's start with number 16. At number 16, Shaktuka or Shaktuka? Shaktuka. I don't know how to pronounce this, but Shaktuka is a mid to late game boss in Khazan. I managed to kill this boss with just my second try. Personally, I rather fight bosses with violet stamina balls, which is usually a beast compared to humanoid bosses which have a white stamina bar. The reason for that is violet stamina doesn't regenerate until you break them and get your brutal attack. Shaktuka, even though he's agile, his moveset is so predictable. Even his burst attack is so easy to counter. The only move that I find annoying is the bite attacks that came with plague build-ups. Another reason I find him so easy is his placement in the game is kinda late, and my stats and gears are already quite good by the time I faced him. Trophy! Ibig sabihin, one phase! Kala ko may second phase! Number 15, Reese. With Reese being second to the last boss, I really expect her to be that super duper hard, especially after encountering some of the brutal waifus in the game. But maybe that's the thing that made me defeat her easily. After fighting all those casters made me think that Reese is also a heavy caster just like them. That's why I keep the pressure by hitting her consistently without letting her cast any of her spell. She is also very prone to flinching on some of my combos, that's why it's not hard to keep the pressure on while fighting her. Even though she has two full phase, another reason that make this fight easy is because at the time I'm fighting her, I'm already to the point that all of my armor set and skills are fully upgraded. With that said, I managed to kill her by just using brute force and without even trying to memorize all of her attacks. Sakit mo din, Berserker! Next on the list is Aratra. Well, at first, I thought this boss is insanely difficult. It's really annoying to see how much helpful he has, and also how small my damage is to his health bar. But because I play a lot of Monster Hunter games, I start to notice that my target lock switched from its face to its arms, and that's the time I figure out that you need to break his arms in order to deal a huge amount of damage. This boss also has a pretty basic attacks, which is kinda similar to some of the spider minions you'll encounter along the way. Aggressive gameplay! Number 13, Yatuga. Yatuga is the first main boss in the game. With that said, he will teach you some of the basics of Khazan's gameplay, and he didn't disappoint by killing me a couple of times. Some of his moves also reminds me of Sekiro's Guardian Ape, in which some of his attack hits pretty hard. The only thing that made him a bit easier is that how easy to memorize his pattern. In fact, some of his attack really looks just like the normal yetis you encounter along the way, just like Aratra. Kaya maubuti dyan sa grab ko. Woo! Sa wakas! Diba? Konting aral lang sa boss! Making it on my 12th spot is Princess Elena. Just like Reese, Princess Elena is just another waifu sorcerer who got punished by my constant aggression and late game build. The only thing that makes her a bit harder is with her insane chaos build up on her second phase, in which you need to bring a lot of chaos cleanse and chaos resistance elixirs. There's also a weird thing that I experience in this fight in which I keep on losing my target lock on her. Let me know in the comment section if you experience that also. Aside from that, I also get punished on her continuous thrust attack combos, in which you can easily reflect if you're good at that skill, in which I am not. So, begin practicing reflection. Loko, nakatikim ka. Coming from the Princess Waifu, let's go to the Witch Waifu. At number 11, Beleriand. Beleriand is another boss fight that can be punished through constant pressure and aggression. The only difference is that I haven't have the final equipment set and stats that give me the aggression similar to the one I mentioned earlier. Beleriand also likes to run a lot, making it really hard for me to break her stamina and get my brutal attacks. There's also a catch on Beleriand in which she will summon minions on the second phase, in which if she summons the Reaper, death will likely become certain, because on how strong this summon is. But overall, she's not that really hard for having just few minutes longer compared to my Princess Elena fight. Daya, may Susan. Sitting at the 10th spot is Hismal. The moment I saw Hismal, I remember Bale from Elden Ring Shadow of the Earth 3, and my PTSD started to kick in. But after a couple of fights and deaths, I noticed that it's not that bad. The only thing that makes him a bit challenging is how hard he hits with his attacks, and also the chaos built up from his attacks on his second phase. Another enemy on this fight is the camera angles, in which I'm struggling a lot on almost majority of all my Souls and Souls-like gameplays. Hismal also has a large stamina and health pool that's really hard to chip in, especially if you don't have some aerial ability to break his horns to get some bonus damage and staggers. But to make it simple, camera is really just the main issue on the Hismal fight, which is somehow forgivable given how massive he is. Number 9, Blade Phantom. Blade Phantom is the second boss of the game. At first, I was really terrified with this boss fight. The reason why is his design, the arena, and the background music really feels like a final boss vibes, and I can't help but feel scared on my first couple of attempts. I'm not even trying to learn or memorize his attack pattern because of how intimidating he is. He is also the first boss that has a white stamina bar that regenerates when you're not aggressively attacking him. But after a few more attempts, I started to notice and punish some of his combos, and that's the time I gained my confidence to observe and exploit his moves. Sayang, di pa nasira yung stamina niya. Please choke! No! No choke! Hans! No choke! For the 8th place, we have Volbino. Volbino is the 4th main boss of the game, and with that in mind, his early placement on the game really punished players with just a mediocre builds and equipment setups. The first couple of minutes fighting him is quite easy, especially his long wind-up slam attacks, which is easy to read. The real fight start is when he ignites his chisel, adding up some fire damage and flame build-up on its attacks that will surely gobble up your health bar if you're not too careful. His chisel sweep attack is also tricky to parry or dodge on my personal experience. That's why I always get punished with that. But overall, majority of his attack is quite easy to read and punish. Also, having the executioner set in which you can be found hidden on the crevice is quite helpful in this fight. Having that fire resistance coming from the set really makes you a bit tanky and less vulnerable on his fire attacks and flame build-ups. Kunti na lang, wala na akong pang-heal. Sugod. Yan. Gusto ko yan. Happy! Tapos ka na ngayon, boy! Tapos ka na! Number 7, Troca. Troca is the first caster waifu you'll encounter in the game. And with that said, you will surely get easily overwhelmed by the number of spells she can throw and how insane the damage is when you get hit. Aside from that, your builds are also not that polished yet at this point of the game, although I think it should be pretty decent at least. The good thing about Troca is she only has a violet stamina ball, in which, like I've said earlier, doesn't regenerate until you break it or you've done a brutal attack to her. But still, compared to Beleriand, Troca has more deadly attacks that can surely punish you, like the 3 consecutive attacks, and the spell barrage is going to fire at you that can potentially one-hit you if you fail to block or dodge it. But even though you manage to dodge it perfectly, you must be ready for the upcoming burst attack that will come after that attack. I also said earlier that you can punish casters by just applying constant pressure and being aggressive, but Troca is a bit different because she has a weird status build-up in which you will gain a debuff that reduces your stamina into half, which is a real pain in the ass, and that's why I think she deserves to be top on my list, but not high enough to surpass the remaining 6 bosses on my list. Aggressive gameplay. Shoutout sa 3 million viewers sa wakas. Speaking of number 6, sitting at the 6th spot is Rankus. Fucking god, Rankus. I really feel Rankus is like a cheap version of Godfrey in Elden Ring, especially with those delayed swings and ground attacks. Even his attacks are too slow and have a long wind-ups animation, he hits quite pretty hard. His stamina regen is also insane, especially if you start jogging that... What the fuck is the fucking drink? I don't know, but yeah, his stamina regen is so insane. He also likes to keep swinging around like Spider-Man, in which I find very annoying because it makes it even hard for me to break his stamina and get my brutal attacks. And after dealing with all of these bullshits and lowering his health bar, he will enter the next phase in which he will turn his weapon into a flamethrower that deals fire damage and flame build up. There's also some kind of visual effects on some of its attacks that make you hard to see some of his moves, like a smoke screen or something, especially on his 360 spinning flame attack. I don't know if the others also experience that, but maybe it's just me. Luckily, Rankus only has 1 full health bar and he only gonna do his second phase when his health drops around 50 to 60%. Well, I can and I don't want to imagine fighting a shitty second phase in full health bar, so thank God that he only has 1 health bar. Ilang yan?
General Khazan.
Ay nako, makangawa nyo na. Aray, ikaw na naman! Teka, nagulat ako. Now we're already on the top 5 of my boss difficulty rankings in Khazan the First Berserker. This is where things start to get nasty. Starting on number 5 is Viper. Did you know that the maker of Khazan released a death record and statistic for this game? And surprisingly, Viper has the highest death counter, reaching up to 7 million deaths recorded. Yes, it's quite shocking that Viper got the highest record instead of some of the bosses after him, which is a lot harder. The only reason I find is because I think majority of the players already rage quit during the Viper fight without even seeing the other bosses next to him. That's why he got the highest record. To make it simple, Viper's placement as early as a third boss of the game really punish players who are new to this kind of genre. Well, I can even say that some of the Souls and Souls-like veterans like me also got punished by him. Viper is the first boss in Khazan that will introduce a 2 full phase fight, but his attacks are pretty straightforward and easy to memorize. But what makes this fight difficult is how insane health pool he has, and the fact that he also has a full health bar on his second phase, which is quite tanky too. Aside from that, being that early on the game also means having just a limited amount of upgrades on your gears and stat, resulting to a small damage that make this fight really tedious and more of an endurance battle. And speaking of endurance, take note that you only have 4 heals available to work with during this fight, unless you're willing to use some of the extra healing items like Tear Dust and Willpower Orbs, in which are also limited on the early stage of the game. Namatay sa pari! Parang Barbatos Lupus Rex yan. Sa wakas, natalo ko din to. Finally, yung lapit to. Going on to my fourth spot is Scalpel. Scalpel is a mid, or I rather say, early late part of the game boss. There are a few bosses in this game that have 2 full phases, and one of them is Scalpel. Aside from his hard-hitting attacks, Scalpel has a few moveset that I don't really like and always caught me off guard. He also has a plague build-up on some of his attacks in which you need to cleanse it immediately or else your health bar will start to get consumed by it. Scalpel has a decent amount of moveset on his first phase, but once you memorize his starting attack patterns, you can skip some of those deadly moves and just bait the basic ones by applying constant pressure and damage to him to enter second phase as quick as possible. On his second phase, this is where Scalpel will become more deadly. He is like a raging bull on steroids where he will just attack you relentlessly, leaving you a very small room to counter-attack, heal, or cleanse status. After defeating him, I watched some other players fight him, and little did I know that his second phase is just a survival battle in which is going to die slowly if you just continue dodging and running from all of his attacks. Like what the heck? I've been fighting and trading blows with him on the second phase the whole time. The hell, I promise if I only noticed that sooner, maybe he will definitely go down lower to my list. Well, moving on, let's go to number 3. Oh shit! Number 3, Elamine. This boss is a living nightmare. Nothing special, no second phase transformation, no sick looking exaggerated attack, it's just her plain sword and her trusty shield. Elamine really punishes dual wield users like me who doesn't have that high stamina damage, so going for that brutal attack will not be an easy task. I also personally think that she has the most insane stamina recovery in the game. Seeing those almost zero stamina regenerate super fast make this fight super annoying. You cannot also damage her easily even though you apply a lot of aggression on your playstyle because of all the blockings that she is doing with her shield. And if you think that shield is only for blocking, then you're wrong. The more you attack her while blocking, the more she's powering up her weapon in order to infuse it with lightning. And you know what lightning buildup does in this game? It makes your stamina recovery slower, which make it even harder to do stamina management and keep up with your insane stamina recovery. She also has this grab attack that I find it hard to dodge, because she usually mixes it with her combo or on her blocking, I think. The best way to punish Elamine is by attacking her on the back, in which I didn't manage to do on my playthrough. If only I knew it, then I must have put a point on the Zephyr skill on the dual wield skill tree. Damn you, Elamine. Fight to the death! Finally, no turning back.
Khazan,
Ikaw na naman? No way! Are you fucking kidding me? We're down to the last 2 bosses on my rankings, and in number 2 spot is Ozma. Ozma is the final boss of the game and he is an absolute menace. But I know that some of you would disagree, saying like, Ozma is the hardest, your list is trash, he should be on the top, blah blah blah. But like I said earlier, these rankings are based on total amount I've spent beating them, and Ozma comes a bit shorter compared to the one on the top of my list. So going back to Ozma, Ozma's a 3 full pace depends on what ending you're going to get. As for me, who always go for the trophy, I did the first Berserker ending in which he has a 3 full pace. Ozma is a mixture of a hard-hitting melee fighter and a spellcaster boss, which is somehow what the final boss should be, right? Because he is the last boss, he should be the strongest. But I only said strong, not bullshit. The number of attack this guy can do is insane. I really want to point out those moves that I don't really like, but it's just too much. Ozma's total number of moveset is almost a combination of 2 to 3 boss moveset in this game. I'm just joking, I exaggerated that one. But yes, the number of his moveset is quite a lot for a single boss fight. Even Ishin, the Sword Saint from Sekiro, will walk away knowing that. I even considered putting him on top of the list because of that bullshit. But because I have a criteria for the rankings, whether I like it or not is just the second. Another funny thing is I even managed to just saw some of his attacks on other streamers, and suddenly I asked myself, what, he has that? What, he can do that? No way, I didn't even see it once on my odds of fighting him. So going back to Ozma, aside from the fact that he has a lot of bullshit that can throw at you, he also has some status build up right up on his sleeves, especially on the first phase, like Freeze and Flame. But the status you need to look out for the whole fight is Chaos. And Chaos is pretty annoying because it slowly cuts your HP, so cleansing it as quick as possible is a must. And speaking of cleansing, Ozma's fight also has a small room for item usage, plus you need to cycle from your healing and cleansing items while dodging, parrying, or punishing him, which make it quite a bit of a daunting task. Even though he has a 3 full pace, his third pace is kind of gimmicky, in which you just only need to do total of 3 brutal attacks to beat it. Tangina mo. Okay, sakit na ng kamay ko. Tapusin na natin to. So now we're done with Ozma. Let's go to the one that made it to the top of my list, which I think majority of you already know who he is. Number 1, Madoka. Maybe some of you now is confused and crying, saying, what the fuck, Madoka only has 1 health bar. Madoka is a piece of cake compared to Ozma. How the hell he is top 1? He's just the 7th boss in the game, blah, blah. But that's exactly the reason why. Madoka is the 7th main boss on the game you're going to fight, and for sure, your stat and your gears are not that good or high enough by the time you face him. Even though he only has 1 health bar, Madoka is quite tanky and has a decent stamina recovery speed, so pulling off some brutal attacks will be a serious task. Although Madoka's great sword attacks are quite easy to read and memorize, what's challenging is his katana pace, in which majority of his attacks become flashy, in which I have a difficult time learning the parry timings. Madoka is also the first boss that introduced the Chaos status bullshit, which like I said earlier, it lowers your max HP. Going back to its katana pace, he can also block or parry you in this pace once you see him crossing his sword. But I'm not quite sure if it's parry or block only because I don't even bother attacking him when I start to saw him doing that stance to avoid being punished. And aside from that, also during his katana pace is really a hit or miss because a single mistake in parrying or blocking on his katana attacks can result to a huge chaos build-up and damage. And personally for me, chaos build-up on Madoka's fight is more punishing compared to Ozma because you don't have that high HP bar yet at that point of time. Unless you will put all your points on vitality, in which case your damage dealing will be much heavily affected, making it difficult to kill him either. Yabangan. Sa wakas, pagkatangis na buhay ito. Sino kaya kalabang ko dito?
How dare you
Widow?
Who the hell do you think you are?
Bakit nakamukha ni Madoka gago? What the hell, first Berserker Khazan? How many times are you going to recycle the most annoying bosses in this game? So that's all for this video. How about you? Do you have your own personal Khazan boss rankings? Let me know in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of contents. Thank you for watching and see you again on my next upload. Bye!